No worries. I'm I'm eager and I'm nervous because this is a new thing for me.
I am also very nervous. Like, what questions are you gonna ask? Am I gonna make a total fool of myself here, or
No, I'm
what's
sure you'll
going
be
on?
fine. No. I have full confidence. Two hands. Honestly, this is one big experiment. But before we get into that, let me say welcome home. Congratulations on a successful trip, I hope.
Oh, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was successful. Went good with work. Was nice having 2 days free to visit the special town that I wanted in Czech Republic. So,
You mentioned that you get kind of homesick. What is it about home that you miss when you're on the road?
well, it's two parts. I would say it's
Mm-hmm.
both, missing home, as in my apartment, the routine, the computer too. I must admit, it's and the friends I have here. I
Sure.
would say that's the big thing.
Uh-huh.
But also, like I said, I'm an introvert with a high social battery, but I do not
Ah,
get but I do not get recharged by doing social things. But I have a high capacity for social things.
yes. We're the
So
same. I think we're the
yeah,
same. They say that the difference between an introvert and an extrovert is an extroverted person recharges themselves with social activity. An introverted person recharges themselves with kind of like independent activity, like alone time.
yeah,
So I too have a very deep social battery, but I am not charged by social interaction. It depletes my battery. So I need that. I need that alone time for me to kind of to charge up again, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely the same for me. So
Mm-hmm.
spending then there 5 days, having to talk to a bunch of people, having meetings,
Yes.
like doing kind of things like that, both socially, as in, activities after work, but
Yeah.
also during work. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I was completely drained after
Yeah.
the last day.
Well, welcome home, Two Hands. I'm glad you made it back. I'm glad it was
Oh,
successful.
thank you.
Thank you so much for jumping on the call today, at short notice. I had this idea to do a casual interview series. I feel like there's so many people in this community that I'm interested in, and like everyone's got a story, and everyone's a gamer, and everyone's got a bit of like personal history, and I just thought like during this period of divergence, right? We're not all kind of focused on the same game. I thought
Yeah.
maybe like a nice kind of central focus for some content over the summer would be just to get to know people and to share those stories more broadly within the community. So if you're open to that, I would love to just, try some experimental questions on you and see how it goes.
Absolutely. I'm here to be your guinea pig. It's fine.
Cool. So here we go. We'll kick it off. I guess welcome to the water cooler. Two hands. Thank you very much for your time
Thank you.
today. I appreciate it.
Oh, I really appreciate it. It's fine. It's fun for being the first person to try this out.
Uh-huh. Could we start with this question? What is the origin of your handle, of your Discord name? Everyone's got a gamer name. You've got a particular one. Where did it come from?
Oh man, I do have this story, but I haven't always gone by this name. It's
Okay.
actually somewhat recent, as in I picked it up during my middle teens, I would say, somewhere
Okay.
13, 14 years of age.
Uh-huh.
But before that, I went by the handle of Läkerol, which it sounds weird, but it's a brand of Swedish, what you call it? Like, what's the word in English? Like throat coughing
Oh,
tablets?
okay. Sure. Like
Like,
a cough drop.
cough drop, yeah, exactly,
Uh-huh.
cough drops. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so it was a brand because I had no idea what I was gonna call myself. When I had a proper name that wasn't given by my dad
Yes.
when he set up accounts for me. So I was like, okay, I need a nickname. What should I go about by? And I couldn't figure it out. So I was looking around my desk and I was like, oh, there's some cough drops called Läkerol on my desk here. Well, I'll go
Uh-huh.
by that one, which was a mistake because it contains a character which things don't
It's
like
hard to type it
when
kind of
said.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. So
Uh-huh.
many services don't accept weird
I see.
weird characters. Yeah.
Yes.
No, so I went by that a lot, like through my entire childhood up until my late teens, where
Mm-hmm.
I played this game called Modern Warfare 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare
Uh-huh.
2. It
Uh-huh.
was all the rage back in my school, and I played it a bunch with my friends at school. Like every single day, we hopped on Skype back then,
Yeah.
and we played. And I loved running around with akimbo pistols. It was super fun. Everyone was running
Sure.
around with like super OP
Rifles,
the
whatever. Yeah.
rifles. Yeah,
Yeah.
if people remember, if people play that game, the ACR, and the Model 1886s, and things like that. But
Hmm.
I loved running around with like pistols, and I run around with the Berettas, the M9. And I was playing on a map. Oh, I can't remember. It was like Scrapyard, or it was something called like some sort of mining map, basically.
Right.
And I was running around, and I was dominating the leaderboards. I was on top. I was having a great time, great match. And then someone typed in the chat, it's like, "Man, liquor all, you are like two hands." I was like, two hands? I
Uh-huh.
was kind of unhappy with my name back then, but you're like two hands. I was like, well, I like using them in Kimbo pistols. Two
Hmm.
hands. Yeah, you're using two hands. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm two hands. Yeah, that's a
Hmm.
great name. So
Excellent.
the game after that, I switched it over, and it's only a lot longer after that I realized he was referencing an anime where there's a main character
Oh,
that uses two pistols and is also nicknamed Two Hands because of it.
I
So
see.
that's where he got it from.
I
And it's like,
see.
you're like Two Hands
Uh-huh.
from that anime,
The
and I didn't
character.
know
Right.
that.
Right.
The
Right. Right.
character,
Right.
I
Right.
didn't know it. Yeah, so I've had a few people's like, "Are you named after that anime character?"
Hmm. Hmm. Not quite.
Well,
Kind
not
of.
quite. I know.
Excellent.
and and it kind of stuck. So
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Excellent.
that's my nickname.
Excellent story. And what part of the world are you currently in?
Oh, I'm based in Sweden, in Scandinavia.
Uh-huh. Excellent. And were you born in the 90s, the 2000s, the 80s? You don't have to say exactly when, just maybe tell us the latter half or the early half of a particular decade, just so we have a sense.
Yeah, I was born in the middle of the 90s.
Middle
Yeah.
of the 90s. Wait, part of this is just kind of like, it'll be interesting from a demographic perspective for me to check in with all these members of the community and just get a sense of where people are and when people were born, that kind of thing. And without going into too much detail, what do you do for work these days?
Oh, well, it's a bit complicated. I can't really say in
Uh-huh.
detail, as you know, as we've talked about this before
Uh-huh.
outside the podcast.
Uh-huh.
But let's say that I'm a consultant.
A
I do
consultant.
consultancy work for get the government and departments and
That kind of thing.
municipalities and things like that. Yeah.
Totally understandable why you can't go into too much detail if you're doing consultancy work for the government. We totally understand. Excellent. Could you list your top one or two types of games that you love to play?
Mm. Well, I would say that at the core, I am a strategy gamer.
Mm,
Strategy gamer. That's like
mm,
I've been playing RTS games as long as I can remember, basically.
mm-hmm.
But I think well, I would say that was my second. I would say that I'm primarily a simulator person,
Hmm.
not perhaps as hardcore as other people are. I'm kind of into sim-light games, games that strive to simulate aspects wherever that is in strategy games, or
Mm-hmm.
if it's sort of like, well, Dark and Darker, that's kind of wants to simulate that dungeon crawling experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of drawn to those games.
Mm-hmm. So whether that's like you being a mech or you being like a fighter in a dungeon or you being a merc like in a bombed out office building trying to extract.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like
Uh-huh.
I like games because I have the theory that games either are simulations or they're abstractions, and
Huh.
if you go towards the abstraction parts, you get like board games where where it's necessary to abstract things so it's easy to play at the table. But
Mm-hmm.
video games have the luxury of being automated, of being digitalized. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the computations and the calculations and things behind the screen that couldn't work in a tabletop,
Mm-hmm.
you can do in a video game. So that's why I'm drawn to the more simulationly part aspects of video games, whatever
Mm-hmm.
is that, like you say,
Mm-hmm.
of those
What do you
examples.
think makes a good sim? Like when a game really does it for you, kind of what boxes does it check to really make it feel like you're in that universe?
Mm. I would say the biggest thing about simulation is immersion.
Mm-hmm.
Like when all the systems work together to simulate an aspect in an approachable way where you can, just immerse yourself in the experience. Like I am doing things that I would have been doing in real life, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sort of almost abstracted a bit to be able to be compatible with a video game.
Yes.
So the example of like Dark and Darker, if we want to go back to that, since we're all familiar
Sure.
with it,
Yeah.
like I just love the resting mechanic because it's simulating, sitting down by the campfire. It's a good way to keep the
Mm-hmm.
pace, control the pace of the game,
Mm-hmm.
but also like having that thing is simulating that part of dungeon crawling and D&D that is so ingrained into the core fantasy. Like having
Mm-hmm.
you actually sit down and rest at the campfire, I feel that that's a perfect way of immersing you into the experience while also providing a simulation and gameplay benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that when everything works together, it's the immersion that's like the core part of it.
Awesome. How do you feel about PvP in games? I know it's not for everyone, and I suppose if it's done well and it fits into that kind of like if it really dovetails with a good simulation, perhaps PvP is is a natural part of a really great game system. But how do you feel about PvP games in general?
It's I'm kind of split on the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've played so many team games, but team games as with PvP, League of Legends, Call of Duty, Battlefield,
Mm-hmm.
all of these games that require you to basically play in a team to be effective
Mm-hmm.
or to have fun. But that has been a consequence of playing games with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always felt like I tend to be drawn more to the one-on-one experience. When it's just me having, testing my skill against another person, and the most skilled person comes out on top.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. So, if you remember the video game For Honor, I had a couple
Mm-hmm.
of friends who only play that game in the big team modes, but I loved playing the dual modes, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where I spent most of my time when I wasn't playing with them because I just loved, okay, it's mano a mano, it's you
Mm-hmm.
and me. Let's
Mm-hmm.
see who's the better person here, and I love those kinds of things, even in team games where you're like squared up with someone and just okay, just you and me. Let's do this. I really like that, but I feel like when with team games, with PvP, with team games, I feel like it's kind of you have to rely on others people, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's also a bad thing because then it means that if someone is less skilled or if someone
Mm-hmm.
is having a bad time, you could be playing the most perfect game out there,
Mm-hmm.
but you cannot, carry or make up for the other people's failures.
Yeah, you suffer from someone else's bad decisions in some
Yeah,
situations. Mm-hmm.
yeah, but when you're playing with friends, and people and people you like, that's absolutely no problem. I'm never someone who gets pissy or
Mm-hmm.
or frustrated with friends in that kind of way. It's like, ah, shit happens. Well, okay, well
Yeah, yeah,
let's do another game.
yeah.
But when playing with randoms or playing with others, I could get like, oh come on, I was having a perfect game and we couldn't, pull it together.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So you're interested in the one v ones that you mentioned, and where you're testing skill against like a single other opponent. Were some of your first experiences with that situation via computer games, or did you learn to play chess or backgammon or some other game prior to kind of like computer games?
no, I wonder. I think I've been playing team sports, in real life
Mm-hmm.
for basically my entire childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I began with soccer or football, and then
Mm-hmm.
I went over to
American football.
no, it was a sport called floorball.
Oh,
It's called
floorball.
inbound. Yeah, it's a sort of European thing. It's
Okay.
like hockey but indoors,
Right.
you can say. So I played a bunch of that also, and then I went over to American football.
Mm.
But I think that since I'm quite tall and I'm quite
Quite large in
broad,
stature. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, large in stature, broad-shouldered.
Uh huh.
I have never been the person who's been playing the forwards or the people who are actually scoring goals and things. I have
Ah,
always had to be a team player. I've always had to be in the back line defending or
that's it. I see. I
the anchor for
understand.
the
I
team. Yeah,
understand.
so I've
Yeah.
never had the chance, to kind of do solo things on my own because I was
Ah,
required back
to
in
carry
those
the
kinds of
team. Uh
positions
huh.
to carry the team,
Uh
yeah,
huh.
to defend.
Interesting.
So getting the chance to
To be the nimble attacker, to be the wingman, to be like to have that kind of mobility in a 1v1 situation, that's something you never really got to experience on the team.
yeah, exactly. So I like most often when I was playing these sports team, I had to play for the team, but here I could play for myself
Mm-hmm.
and express my skill in a way that I couldn't back then. So I think that's why I perhaps, not to go full psychoanalysis on myself, but I think that's where it comes from, because I like, and when you talked about PvE, like I really like competing with myself too. I love these, Left 4 Dead's, Vermintides, Darktides. I love those kinds of games, but you play that with a team of, often 3 other people.
Uh-huh.
But I never, compare myself against my other teams. I always compare how well did I do, compared to last time. So
Mhm.
it's the same with other PvE games. How well did I do against my previous selves?
Mhm.
Same with like racing games and stuff like that. So it's always a competition. And if it's not against someone else in a 1v1 scenario, or basically 2v2, like these smaller groups instead of
Mhm.
large teams,
Mhm.
it's against the other opponents, or it's against myself, I would say.
Do you think it's a special trait that people have, that some people have, where they desire to rise to the occasion of that competitive spirit? Like, not everyone is competitive by nature. Maybe is it gamers you think are comfortable with that sort of like testing and retesting of oneself in different challenging situations?
Yeah, I would say so. Together with people who play sports, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like gaming and sports require there's like sports and games in general requires there to be a loser and a winner. If
Yes.
that's
Yes,
if
you're
that's
right.
against someone else, like
Yeah.
it's an inherent quality. You cannot, like, I don't think there's any game.
You could draw in soccer. You can have a draw in soccer. But
Oh yeah,
I suppose like I'm splitting hairs there though, right?
yeah, basically, but you can, yeah, absolutely, it could be a draw, but like inherently there needs to be a win condition.
Yes.
And with the win condition, there needs to be someone who loses and then someone who wins.
Yes.
And I think it's absolutely, as you say, that it kind of trains or encourages that type of competitive behavior amongst people who play sports and play video games, or
Yes.
people who are competitive by nature are drawn to those.
Uh-huh.
That's why, you have smack talk, you have gamer talk.
You do. Yeah,
That's
you
why
do.
we're
Yeah.
infamous for it.
Yeah.
Because that kind of competitive nature comes out in
Uh-huh.
these kinds of games.
Is there a culture for swordplay in Sweden, for fencing, for the rapier, for the épée, for those things? Or is that more of a continental European kind of endeavor?
In my experience and what I've seen, it's always been a more continental thing.
Uh-huh.
But HEMA has become popular here. I've seen it a lot. I've had friends who were into it. I would have liked to try it myself sometime.
Mm-hmm.
But like the sort of fencing, Olympic fencing and stuff like that, has always been a kind of continental thing,
I see.
I would say.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Okay, I've got a bit of a lightning round where I'm going to fire off a bunch of questions, and I would love to hear your response. But you don't feel obligated to go any deeper than you need to. Just respond quickly to the lightning round. How does that sound?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. What is your favorite thing to drink?
Oh. Now I actually think, like, drink as an alcoholic or just in general.
Interpret it as you'd like.
I would say that I do have a soft spot for soft drinks.
Soft drinks.
It's not good. It's not good for you, but
That's fine.
it's a soft spot.
What
Yeah.
kind of soft drink?
Oh, my favorite is root beer and Dr. Pepper.
Yeah,
Not,
those are bangers.
not very Swedish response, but
And then, I wasn't
it's those
expecting.
kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's those kinds of things that didn't exist when I was growing up. So
Exotic.
exotic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
so
Cool.
I would say root beer and Dr. Pepper.
Nice. How many games do you think that you purchased in the past 12 months?
Oh, this is a good question, because I've been actually discussing this with my friends. I used to buy a lot of games. I would buy as many as I could afford back when, the Steam sales and back then.
Sure.
But as I've gotten older, I've kind of focused in or honed in or like retreated from, basically trying all these weird kind of new games and stuff. Like I have games I know I will like, and I was like, okay, yeah, this game is really my jam. It's kind of, I don't want to waste my time with perhaps things that I won't enjoy or I don't think is going to be good. So when I would say that in the past 12 months, this past year, I think I've only purchased 3-4 games.
Interesting. Oh, very interesting.
So I kind of retreated back or fallen back to, a kind of core set of games that I really enjoy playing over and over again.
But that's a bit of a deviation from how things were maybe in years past, where you were a bit faster and looser with your purchasing of titles. Interesting. What was the first PC you or your family had? Can you remember?
Yes, my dad was one of the first adopters of a personal computer back when they were starting to become a thing
Oh, wow.
in the 80s or late 80s.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and it was for work. So I remember, like, PCs have been a constant in our family, and
Hmm.
that it was this super expensive thing.
Very fortunate then.
Yeah, basically, but it was given from him by work. But it's been a constant that he has needed one of those for his work. So
Uh-huh.
I would say that the first actual PC that I got was a hand me down from my dad as he upgraded to something
Right.
else. It was a Windows 95 PC.
Uh-huh.
That's
Excellent.
that's what I remember that I had in my childhood
Uh-huh.
room,
Where
basically.
did you have consoles in your childhood growing up?
Yes, and also no. It was never a big thing.
Uh-huh.
We were always PC centric.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Me too.
like my dad bought a Nintendo, the original one,
Uh-huh.
the
The,
NES
the
was taken
NES or
from
whatever.
the NES, yeah,
Yeah.
for my sister who's older than me,
I see.
for us both to enjoy.
Because the actual
And
question is are you a Nintendo kid or a Sega kid? Or if it's a bit later, are you a PlayStation kid or an Xbox kid?
this is a hard question because I've never had any brand loyalty.
Okay,
Uh,
interesting. Huh.
so my first console was my in quotation marks first console was the NES,
Uh-huh.
but then I much later in the lifespan of the PlayStation 1, I got one since it was on sale.
Ah.
So I played a bunch of PlayStation 1 games that we
Mm-hmm.
went to the rental video rental store,
Yes.
and we brought the games back and we burned the discs on the PC,
Oh. Oh.
and then we returned them. So we had
Uh-huh.
a huge bunch of pirated in quotation marks burned
Dare I
video
say,
games.
a victimless crime.
A victimless crime indeed.
Awesome. Um, what's one candy or one snack that you feel that you just have to buy anytime you go to a convenience store?
There one okay. It's hard. It's split. It's split. It's
Okay.
between
Okay.
fudge. I love fudge.
Yeah.
Like they come in like square bites.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they're the taste of vanilla. Oh, it's so
A
good. I
mint
love
fudge for
it.
me is that's it doesn't get any better than mint fudge in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then is it called wine gums?
Wine
I
gums, little
think.
gummies. Yeah, like a circular
Yeah.
colored gummy, right?
Yeah, those
Yeah.
two are my absolute favorite. So if I don't really eat much sweets, but if I had to, if I got to choose,
Mm-hmm.
uh, either fudge or wine
Do
gums.
you call them convenience stores? I know there's different words. Sometimes it's the corner store, sometimes it's the bodega. If you had to refer to the convenience store, what's the word that you would use?
Mm, we don't really have any like 7-Elevens. Like there weren't really a thing where we grew up. We
Uh-huh.
had proper grocery stores that we went to.
I see.
Like the closest would be to go to. Well, our versions would be to go to the no, what's it called, the gas station.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that would be
Sure.
the closest to a convenience stores. But
Right.
otherwise, they were called like Nash shop, or we would go to kiosks and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. But we
Mm-hmm.
didn't have those convenience stores as
Mm-hmm.
perhaps you guys did.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Can you cook? And if so, do you have like a go-to dish that you love to make?
Oh yes, yes, yes. I before I became a student, I couldn't really cook.
Mm-hmm.
But I during my university time here in where I'm living right now, which is a
Mm-hmm.
big university town, there was a student association that I was part of. I won't go into details, but it was a student association I was part of.
Okay.
And I got involved with this student association, and one of the open slots that they had were at first assistant cook for it.
Okay.
So I was kind of a busboy, a server, and
Mm-hmm.
assistant cook
Mm-hmm.
all in one
Mm-hmm.
for the student association. So I spent 1.5 year as that, learning from the
Oh, very
person
good.
who was the chef and the person responsible for the events that were being held, because the student association hosted like fancy dinners for
Uh-huh.
people that could go, and it was like these traditional fancy student dinners that were quite popular,
Oh, a
or
tremendous
still
learning
very
opportunity
popular.
then, right? You must have learned a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. So
Uh-huh.
especially cooking for a lot of people, like the most, and then after that, I was promoted to head chef and the
Oh,
event manager, planner person. Like I
dang.
was responsible for the entire
The whole show.
event, show, yeah,
Yeah.
in terms of events and things we hosted, the dinners and everything like that.
Uh-huh. So you can cook a little
So
bit. So what is there a dish that is like a go-to dish that you love to make?
yeah, it's carbonara.
Oh,
Carbonara.
carbonara. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's because it's so simple
Mm-hmm.
and no cream. Absolutely no cream at all. Like
Okay.
cream is a sin to add in carbonara.
Uh-huh.
You get the creaminess only from eggs, from cheese, and from black pepper.
I,
That's the sauce.
I see.
And it's so easy to make, and it's so good, and it's a great date food too because like you can just throw it together. It's very impressive, and it can feed. And if you're feeding a lot of people, you can absolutely do that too.
Yeah.
You can easily scale it.
Very
So
versatile there. It's impressive for on a date. It's utilitarian if you're feeding a bunch of people. Excellent.
yeah, it's carbonara.
You're absolutely we're stomping all over the quote lightning round here, two hands. But I'm here for it. I appreciate it. What's the longest gaming session you've ever had?
Wow. It must have like a big popular thing back in Sweden when I was growing up were these things that we called LANs. Well, they
Lance,
weren't LANs in the traditional sense as you go to some
your
big
friend's house, or you
venue.
bring your computer and you make a local area network party kind of thing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of those things. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So back then, with during the semester when you had the
Yes.
semester off,
Yes.
during the summer, like we could game, for basically a day straight,
Yes.
from dusk to dawn. And in Sweden, it gets it's light outside, for almost the entire night, only
Yes.
getting dark like for 2-3 hours. So like we
Oh, what
could,
a treat.
yeah, so we could game like basically, through the entire night without any issues,
Wow.
just hooked up on Jolt Cola and Monster Energy.
Yes.
So
Cool.
absolutely, I can't say in it like for sure,
A
but
definitive
absolutely
number of hours, but
24 plus hours. Yeah.
right, easy, cool. Man, I got a lot of good memories of old LAN parties. We still have a crew that we do it remotely now around the Christmas time, but it's highlights of my gaming past for sure. LAN parties. Okay, last question in the lightning round. How many hours on average a night do you sleep?
Oh, it depends if it's
Mm-hmm.
summer or if it's winter.
Mm-hmm. Your part of the world is very particular, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's summer, I might only sleep for 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours, because
Mm-hmm.
the sun comes up and it wakes me up
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't feel like I need any more than that
Mm-hmm.
during summer.
Mm-hmm.
But during winter, man, I'm always so tired. So I might sleep like if I could sleep undisturbed, then perhaps 8 to
8 or
like
more.
10 hours,
Yeah,
8 or
sure.
more.
Yeah. Great. Interesting. Yeah, it's really neat to hear how like the part of the world that you live in can actually like it has a very distinct relationship with the kind of gamer you can be, right? Or like there's seasonal things. Like it's just I think it's very interesting. There are lots of games in early access right now. It seems like early access is kind of par for the course for how games need to be developed these days. What are your thoughts on early access games?
I believe that early access can be a great boon if done right.
Mm-hmm.
And people usually say to me like, "Oh, well, you can't use this example because it's a special one." But I would say that the perfect example of an early access done right is Baldur's Gate 3.
Ah.
That game was in early access for a long time.
Huh.
And during that time, they perfected it. They listened to feedback. They hosted, proper community update sessions,
Mm-hmm.
forums, yeah, videos, and, cons even, where they like went through the changes and explained them in detail. And, they just handled that early access to perfection. And
Uh-huh.
then when the game finally released, they were rewarded with it because the interest had been, picking up through the entire early access
Uh.
with the word of mouth and the spreading of how good the game was becoming and how well they were doing in early access.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that more games should utilize early access in that kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I know it's a lightning round, but I have to say that
No, this is
I
we've graduated now. We can take our time.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. But I have a bunch of discussions with a couple of friends of mine who are very interested in the industry and things like that. And so this I'm often thinking about this, but I think that early access could be a great boon in that kind of direction,
Yes.
but also because traditional publishing strategies have failed. Like you
Mm.
cannot be this AA developer
Mm-hmm.
and keep your mouth shut for 4 years and then reveal your game at a E3 or
Mm-hmm.
Summer Game Fest or whatever they are, the Game Awards,
Mm-hmm.
and people go, oh, okay, well, this looks fine, and then release it 3 months later, because those, we have seen it time and time and again, those games bomb
Mm.
because they are not tapped into the wishes and demands of the audience that exist,
Mm-hmm.
because they are keeping their heads down, they're keeping their mouth shut, like
Mm-hmm.
nobody knows this game is being made, so they're not tapped into that market. They're making a game for themselves, and that can be good in certain situations. But I think that early access have the chance of you, like as a publisher or as a game developer, putting something out and saying, okay, this is what we are want to do, how is the interest for this, and then you can gauge the interest, gauge it without having to complete a game, spend millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then have 3,000 people play it concurrently on launch, like we've seen
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
time and again here with games, some that deserve it and others that do absolutely not do it. Like Concord is the prime example of this, keeping their heads down, shutting up about this game, and then
Uh-huh.
really releasing it, and everyone's like, meh.
Yeah.
So,
Huh.
yeah.
I didn't know
So,
that the Concord took that approach where they kept their cards closer to their chest. You saying that the Concord didn't have a very robust kind of like feedback process. They were basically in stealth the whole time, and they just dropped the game, and then
yeah,
no one really cared, kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. So it was a traditional development, because for
Uh
some
huh.
reason, the games industry is extremely secretive.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you look at how like a lot of the successes lately have been indie games,
Mm-hmm.
and these indie games have either had early access periods where word of mouth has been spreading about how good they are, or have non-traditional means of marketing, people developing games with Patreon, or
Mm-hmm.
putting up things on Twitter and YouTube and devlogs and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
where they say, oh, I want to make this game, this is where I'm at now, do you want to follow in my story? So people can attract attention that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the way to go now, instead of just relying on this old traditional publishing method. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that, to answer your question, early access can be both used in an evil way, if you can call it evil,
Mm-hmm.
in the way that it's kind of done, but you're just doing it so you can avoid criticism, or do things that aren't concurrent with the wishes of your audience,
Mm.
or you can use it for good, like video games like Baldur's Gate 3,
Actually being
and
receptive and building
being
hype
with
and like,
building hype.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
And,
Dark and Darker kind of was in that way too, right?
uh-huh.
With the play tests,
Uh-huh.
like they like if they imagine if they like had just kept their mouth shut, and then today announced Dark and Darker on the Summer Game Fest, or
Uh-huh.
people would like, what is this, like this looked like crap,
Yeah.
like I don't want to play this.
Yeah.
But instead they had people play the play test and say, wow, there
Uh-huh.
is nothing like this,
Uh-huh.
this plays really well, this has potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, I like this. I'm gonna tell my friend to go, get the playtest.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So it could be used for both good and evil.
This is a big can of worms, and I don't want to go into it too deeply, but where do you think Dark and Darker lost the plot? Because it is amazing. I can't think of another game that was so near and dear to the community, that had so much community support at one stage of its early access development, now finds itself fighting tooth and nail just to keep, a few thousand people playing the game. I know it's a big complicated equation, but is there one or two moments you can point to where you think that like the team behind Dark and Darker kind of made some fatal mistakes?
Yeah, I can say two. Keep in mind that I started playing when it launched on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So about last summer, about a year ago from now.
but I could, if I could retroactively think about what people have said to me, what I've seen and read myself, then I would say that the introduction of the new classes were the first mistake.
Mm.
Because as we talked about this earlier, but that's when they started to break with the established formula of how classes work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of things, it's been a cascading effect of not being able to balance things because of how they designed those classes,
Mm-hmm.
with them having no resource management,
Mm-hmm.
with them having these extreme kind of mobility
Mm-hmm.
or sustain mechanics and kiting or mobility mechanics. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the first big mistake, because when you're trying to balance things with the original classes and then with the new classes, that's when friction. That's why, people have not really. We had like fighter has been OP, but that has been because of weapons basically, or like proper game mechanics. But most of the overpoweredness has been with classes,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
And class design.
druid,
Uh-huh.
warlock,
Uh-huh.
etc. Sorcerer now, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So like most of the original OPness of like, or the original classes have been, from items basically and
Mm-hmm.
stats.
Mm-hmm.
and the but the new ones have always been a problem with design that is amplified by that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say breaking from the formula there is the first mistake they did.
Mm-hmm. Was there a second mistake that you mentioned?
Yes, the second mistake was when they lost the plot, so to say. And you can remind me what patch number it was. Was it 69? Was it the funny number
Yes.
where they squished all the stats
Yes.
basically?
Yes.
Yes. As you might recall, I loved that patch
Uh-huh.
because I didn't love how they did it.
Mm-hmm.
As in, we talked about that before off the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
but I really didn't like how they, in the middle of a wipe,
Mm-hmm.
just did this.
Yeah.
Uh,
Artlessly trampled the live game, and kind of forced a vision. Had they done it a bit more artfully and more surgically, and more thoughtfully, then that new model of the game could have been presented much more favorably, and people would have maybe seen the vision there and adopted it more readily, instead of it just introducing all sorts of friction.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Because I think that I am not subscribing to SDF's so-called vision now, because
Mm-hmm.
I think he's completely lost the plot in how he thinks he wants the game to be.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a period of time around patch 69 where I thought the changes that were being made were really good. We
Mm-hmm.
got the squishing of the stats. We got the introduction of fog of war, of randomized modules, the removal of, or not the removal, but the introduction of continuous dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Things. I was actually kind of hopeful, because I could see like what I thought was his vision of the game, but the community backlash there
Mm-hmm.
was remarkable, and I understand why people were angry. But I feel like most of it was powered by, or driven or instigated by, streamers and YouTubers
Mm-hmm.
that had the ear of SDF,
Yes.
which has now been proven later, basically,
Yes.
with him very much listening to them and them instigating the anti or the
The
campaign
pushback.
against
Yes.
the
Yeah.
pushback against these campaign
Yeah.
because of selfish reasons.
Yes. Because it
and
makes for better
and that
content. They have their own reasons for wanting gear disparity and for wanting right the previous system. And so because they were the squeaky wheels who get the grease, so to speak, then SDF was encouraged to reverse course and
yeah,
walk back from that vision.
yeah, and I think the pushback he received made him, kind of, I can't say for sure. I'm not gonna
But apprehensive to make further changes, kind of thing.
be apprehensive, but I think it kind of broke him,
Oh, I
kind of.
see.
Because the pushback was so intense
It was.
that he kind of had a crisis of faith in his vision.
Uh-huh.
And then, that's where we got, remember the long rambling,
Yes.
posts from him. And, the completely changed, like, okay, I've thought about this. I've been staying up at night about this. I want to go back to the original vision that I had.
Uh-huh. So you see, it's taken him this, because he was so emotionally, mentally damaged from the pushback after 69, it's taken him this long to finally find his footing and regain the confidence to return the game to his previous vision. That's kind of, it's
Yeah.
interesting to think about that way.
But I think that the original vision that he had wasn't good, or wasn't what his audience wanted.
Uh-huh.
Because we've seen now what he's doing, with the return of the circle, with his
Yes.
talk about the 1v3s, but he doesn't have any real goal or way to implement that kind of
Yes.
thing with how the game is currently being developed. So
Yeah.
I think that he was kind of being steered into the right way by the others in his team. Say, okay, we have an audience. They want this. Let's marry this together with your vision and create something. I think that's was where we got that kind of good period around patch 69.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I think that kind of broke him. The pushback broke him there, and then every change after that has been bad, mostly bad. I
Yes.
think,
Yes.
and has completely destroyed the faith and interest I have in the game.
Uh-huh. Is there a specific kind of game you hope comes out in the next 2 years? What would be your dream game to play? And maybe this takes us back to the earlier part of the conversation where you really are interested in strategy, in simulation, in immersion. Can you give me an idea of like, is there a specific kind of game you hope comes out in the next year or two?
Absolutely, for sure. I would say that if we pull back the conversation to Dark and Darker, I would hope we get a competitor to Dark and Darker
Mm-hmm.
that retains the simulation or goes even further with the simulation aspects of a multiplayer extraction dungeon crawler
Mm-hmm.
that has a sensible design, that has an immersive design, that
Mm-hmm.
has a simulation aspect with it, together with some sort of balanced meta progression that doesn't involve scamming people in the marketplace and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Because I've been kind of craving that sort of old school
Yes.
D&D Dark and Darker kind of, because I when Dark and Darker came out, I spent 400 hours in an entire summer on that game. I
Uh-huh.
play that game every single day with my friends. I
Uh-huh.
was completely hooked, even
Uh-huh.
though the kind of imbalances and the issues were slowly beginning to make
Mount up.
themselves apparent.
That's it.
Mount up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the honeymoon period in
It's fantastic.
was fantastic, and I hope there will be a game like Dark and Darker that will reignite that honeymoon period with the direction of things where I want them to be.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh-huh. And then going back to that question I asked you off the top, can you recall one of the most memorable moments from gaming that you've had in the past year?
The past year.
I guess this takes us back to the beginning of that honeymoon period for Dad, right? Where you were playing
Yeah.
at the Steam release.
Yeah, I would kind of say it because I was obsessed. I was that's how I found you. Like I wanted to become better. I wanted to, improve myself because I wasn't sure what I was doing back then.
Mhm.
But that money because I've never played anything like that, before, like Dark and Dark.
Uh-huh.
Nothing.
Uh-huh.
Like nothing has come close. Like as I said before, Total Biscuit has described these kinds of games as a desperation genre. They're called the desperation genre because that's where there's something new that people have never experienced before, and it makes them desperate for it and willing to defend or play those games when
Despite the issues that they have.
despite the issues.
Yeah.
And I think he used it originally to talk about games like Dark Souls and games like, now they're a dime a dozen, but
Sure.
back then, these kind of survival crafting games like Rust and things like that. That's what he was talking about originally.
Uh-huh.
But I would say, like, absolutely, like in the past 12 months, the honeymoon period of Dad was one of the strongest, most fun, most interesting times I've had in gaming in a long while.
Mm-hmm. So a desperation game is a game that is so good and so compelling that people are just desperate to play it. And that's been characterized recently as kind of like first of their kind IPs, like Rust, Dark and Darker. I suppose Tarkov you could definitely lump in there. Interesting. I think it has something to do with the fact that there is like a real stake, a real threat of loss that that really if you're talking about immersion, people feel invested. People feel like that they've worked hard to build up their stash or their kit, or they've got weapons or wealth or whatever it is. And when you go into the dungeon or you go into the raid, you're risking that progress. And maybe that's part of what makes it a desperation game, is that because there's a real stake, there's a real consequence to your actions in the raid, that it makes an experience that when you're just playing a casual deathmatch game just doesn't. You mentioned early on, running around with pistols akimbo, right? You've got a couple of Berettas. It feels good to be the top of the leaderboard. It feels good to have a great session. But beyond the score, there's nothing you really take away from an excellent match like that. But you have an extraction game where you play lights out very well. You're walking it with people's M4s, you're walking it with people's artifacts, you're walking it with people's visceral pants, boots, whatever it is. And there's something that is so much more compelling about that experience than just getting a good score one time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can say like this. There's been 3 games where adrenaline has been so high. I felt my heart in my throat.
Yes.
My hands have been shaking.
Yes.
And I've been like sweating.
Yes.
There's only 3 games that have brought that done that to me.
Uh-huh.
And the first one was DayZ. Playing that game for the first time during the mod time period was one of the most scary and most intense and adrenaline pumping situations ever. Because if you're familiar with that game, it's the same thing. You stand to lose hours of progress as soon as you hear a crack of the bullet whizzing past your head when you have spent 12 hours gearing up. You know, like everything can be undone in an instant. That is like I think it taps into something primal in us, because I think it's like almost sort of a do or die response that is being triggered by the game, basically.
So DayZ was one. I can guess the other two: Tarkov and Dark and Darker.
And Dark and Darker, exactly.
Well, speaking as someone, I've only ever played, of those 3, I've only ever played Dark and Darker. But certainly, and before Dad, I had never played. I guess I played DMZ. I played the DMZ, and that was an extraction game, and I felt it there. It was the first ever experience I had with a Call of Duty game. I really missed the boat with some of those like first-person shooter, with Call of Duty in particular. And so, because I wasn't really that invested in the franchise, I kind of I took DMZ a little more casually, even though it was like a high octane extraction game. But as soon as I found Dark and Darker, that was kind of like, I felt like I was getting in at a much earlier stage. I felt a sense of ownership over the game experience, and because of that, I let the game in a lot more deeply. And then I realized that it was this extraction mechanic that really made it something different than the other games I'd been playing in the past.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just so nice to get to know you a bit better, Two Hands. You know, I appreciate you jumping on the call short notice and being a willing participant. You're the second person that I've spoken to in this capacity, and I look forward to sharing the stories of yourself and others in this community, and just like, I don't know, having other people get to know you as I've had the good fortune to get to know you over the past weeks and months.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great fun having this conversation. You are an excellent interviewer and an excellent conversation partner,
Awesome.
I must say.
Thanks, Two Hands. I won't take any more of your time. We'll say goodbye for now, but thank you again for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks.